At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
And what goes on from there is going to have to be styled to what actually is your disappearance story. Is it the man said type of disappearance, what we just talked about? Is it one like Emily Risling where you have to really go find out, well, did that witness really see her or not? Things like that you'd have to start tailoring what you're going to do. But you can only do that if you become a little educated. And frankly, you have to become cynical, as I've become over the last 9 years, about anything regarding this and what witnesses say and what husbands say, and you just have to doubt all of it.
That's Ed Dentzel, the host of the Unfound podcast. This is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. I'm Jason Blair. This is the second of 2 episodes with Ed Dentzel, an expert in long-term disappearances and the host of the Unfound podcast. We're discussing the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous people. In the first episode, we discussed Ed's background and influence, including his childhood fascination with mysteries, early exposure to law enforcement culture, and his training in screenwriting, acting, and improv skills. All things that shaped his interviewing style. We also discussed his philosophy and practice, including his emphasis on listening over scripting, the limits of law enforcement when it comes to disappearances, the role of intuition and pattern recognition, and Indigenous disappearances and structural neglect that contributes to them, the role that geographic isolation plays in those cases, and the impact of invisibility in the media, as well as cultural erasure, systemic under-resourcing. And we also discuss our personal reflections on the moral urgency of amplifying these cases. In this episode, we're going to dive into some specific cases, including that of Olivia Lone Bear, who went missing near the Fort Berthold Reservation in North Dakota, Jermaine Charlo, who went missing from the Flathead Reservation in Montana, the disappearances of Ashley Loring Heavyrunner and Leo Wagner from the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, the disappearances of Jeremy Jourdain and Nevaeh Kingbird from the Leech Lake Reservation in Minnesota. And we're also going to discuss broader advice for families and law enforcement.
I had a disappearance of Evelyn Piper. She said that she was going to fly to Israel to get married. The problem was she didn't have a passport and she wasn't dating anybody. And she's missing. This is common stuff. This is stuff that police officers should know and they don't. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about that you need to be able to tap into when things don't start going the way you think that they're going to go. Because my perception is they started looking into her disappearance. They started thinking, well, she went here and she said she was going to go there. So these people must be lying or something. They're probably not lying. She probably wasn't there.
Right. Let me ask you about another.
It doesn't mean she wasn't murdered. It very well may be, but you have to be able to determine this very early on that something is not right here. And sometimes that means looking at the missing person herself.
Well, yeah, you're getting it. Actually, I think what I was going to ask you about, that becomes sort of the next clue, right? Not necessarily the answer, but it tells you what direction, essentially, to quote unquote, whether this is physically searching or otherwise, to start looking. Because you can almost, once you've gotten to the point where you know these two things haven't happened, you can rule that out, and you can start to look at, why they may have lied. For example, if I went missing tonight, Ed, and the police came to you and they said, what do you know about Jason's day? And I told you, I went out and got a salad for lunch and I did X, Y, or Z. I might be lying to you because I don't want you to know that I'm violating my diet, but whatever. If you if you hold to that story,
Right.
I always tell people, if I ever go missing, please tell every bad thing about me, every lie I've told, every suspicion you've ever had about me.
Right.
Tell them everything.
That's right. And the way I look at this particular disappearance that we're talking about right here, it very well may be that she was murdered. But what challenges my imagination about this particular case is what some I guess guy set this all up and then couldn't put her in the driver's seat. They made that big of a mistake that, oh yeah, I'm going to make it look like she drove off into the water and drowned. But I forgot to put her in the driver's seat. That seems unlikely.
Probably unlikely. But what about this? What about the idea that somebody else is driving the car, they have an accident, the other person is able to get out, she's not, the person never reports it?
Could have happened.
Seems more plausible.
It could have happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. Could have happened. But it's clear to me that she probably was not telling the truth. It very well may be that she didn't tell the truth because she didn't want anybody to know who she was going to be with. Happens a lot.
Right. Well, let me ask you about, you had mentioned Jermaine Charlo. So 23-year-old Indigenous mother of two, lived on the Flathead Reservation, which is on the other side of the Rocky Mountain front from where Ashley and Leo Wagner are, closer to Missoula. She was last seen at a bar, the Badlander Bar. It was around midnight, and she was seen on surveillance footage behind the bar with her boyfriend and some other people. Her boyfriend, Michael DeFrance, he told police that he dropped her off at a grocery store. He later sort of shifted the story, saying she was near a friend's house. And one of the things that really strikes me about this case, the first period of investigation that's done by one local agency follows the script that you described perfectly in the other cases. They listened to what people said and they, followed leads related to what people said. There wasn't an enormous amount of effort, and really progress in the case started to happen when another investigator was pulled onto the case who had a little more familiarity with these kinds of cases, was willing to throw his cell phone on billboards to collect information. And then eventually they started doing things like tracking her cell phone and collecting other evidence, some of which we don't know about, but they're like hints to it that pointed to a property that DeFrance lived at, and they were eventually able to trace.
Yeah. I'm shocked.
Yeah. Very shocked, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Why would you believe him? Once again, I understand if you're naive and, and you're ignorant about the whole thing. Well, you shouldn't be that way. You don't have to be that way. They followed it because he said something, if women, universally, if women have harm come to them, it's usually by some guy that they know. You shouldn't trust these guys.
So they should be the first area of focus.
No matter what they say. Unless there is something scientifically that they can show that she really did get dropped off. And if there's video of her getting out of the car and walking down the street and him turning around and going the opposite direction, and then there's video of him getting home or whatever, and him getting out by himself in a timely manner and her walking down the street by herself, then yes. Otherwise, you do not believe these people.
Right. And do you think, because I mean, I think this is a refrain that we hear, often, right? Like the most dangerous thing, a lawyer I know once put it, a prosecutor I knew, the most dangerous thing to any woman is a man that she's close with.
Yeah.
And so we know that.
Yeah.
But what is it that gets in the way in practice?
I think investigators' ego gets in the way because they say, surely this person just wouldn't lie to me outright like that. The problem is, we as humans, we overestimate our ability to be able to tell if somebody's lying to us. We think that we have some special innate skill. Yeah, granted, maybe we get fooled sometimes, but we actually think that, I'd know if that person, I'd know if there was a killer standing right in front of me. No, you wouldn't.
No.
It's ego, and it's just, well, as you stated right at the beginning, we're not going to do anything unless there's evidence. Well, these people who do these things are more than happy to give you all the false evidence in the world. And the only thing that's going to combat that is your experience of knowing these people lie.
Well,
otherwise you're just going to believe anything these people tell you.
Is there anything, sort of taking that example of men who are close to women, that you've noticed sort of like patterns or little things where you could tell? I think I remember hearing you talk about this on your podcast at one point about, if somebody else reports a woman who's disappeared and it's not their husband, and then you go to the husband's door and they're kind of nonchalant about it.
Yes. Right. That is a huge tell. Now, understand, that doesn't mean the disappearance is going to be easy to solve, but at least you'll be on the right track. Instead, what we have is police believe these guys. Oh yeah, I got up this morning and she was gone and her car is here and her purse is here. And, the police, the investigator just writing this down as if he's, doing the Emancipation Proclamation. Oh yeah, that's so interesting. That's so true and everything. And then they, why would you ever write down anything that you think is a lie?
That's a good point.
You should know that, you should know that it's a lie. Absolutely.
You shouldn't take it seriously.
No.
Well, speaking of lying, I'll go to a case that I care a lot about, but the case of Ashley Loring Heavyrunner. 20-year-old Indigenous woman, Blackfeet Reservation, disappeared somewhere in June, depending on who you listen to, between sort of like June 6th and June 13th on 2017. She had been doing fairly well, was going to college at the local Blackfeet Community College. Her grandfather, who had raised her on a ranch with her sisters, died, and then she broke up with her first love, got involved with an older crowd, got involved in drugs. The last true sighting of her, she was seen at a party after leaving her parents' house. There's like a video of it. But then, when her sister, who she talked to very regularly, Kimberly, didn't hear from her, and Kimberly was coming back from Morocco, so they were planning on getting together. When she didn't hear from Ashley, she became concerned. She started calling around, and she came across her, because she was thinking to herself, who's involved in an older crowd and who's involved in drugs? And she called her cousin, Tashina Eastwood Crane, and she called her, and immediately her cousin said, well, you should talk to Paul, who's Paul Valenzuela, her husband. And they were in the middle of, acrimonious relationship. She said, you should talk to Paul. Paul saw Ashley a couple weeks ago. I don't know what it is. You should really talk to Paul. She calls. Paul starts basically yelling at her and saying that Tashina is lying to you. You should really talk to her. Eventually, a guy named Sam McDonald, all of these people are members of the tribe. Sam McDonald pops up lived on St. Mary's Lake, said he picked up Ashley. She spent 6 days at his house. Does this almost like love affair kind of story. Couple things I'll throw out there for good fun. Sam has a son named Donald, and he has said several times that dad hurt Ashley. So you basically have these three people who are behaving enormously suspiciously around the case. For me, in just listening to that, by the time you get to Sheena and Paul, and even before you get to Sam, like, red alert is going off in my head.
Sure. Right.
What are your thoughts on the case? She's still, we haven't found.
Well, how long ago was this?
June of 2017.
All right, so we got like 8 years. First of all, when I hear a story about, well, she was with me for 6 days, that did not happen. All right, that didn't happen. That just did not happen. That doesn't mean the two didn't run across each other. That doesn't mean that Sam didn't kill her or something. But she was just hanging out there, never called anybody. What did he do? Have her change in the basement?
Right.
What are we talking about here? Did she have any prior relationship? Did she know this guy? How did she know him?
Supposedly just had met him recently before that at one of the parties.
It did not happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he didn't run into her and didn't kill her. But the problem we also have to remember, and this is once again something that sucks about disappearances, people make stuff up. People who are totally innocent make stuff up. Why? Because they like the attention. In some distorted way, they think that they're helping. They say something to give hope to the family that the person is still alive. They have mental health issues. Pick one. This is common. And this is why, for me, I don't believe pretty much any eyewitness testimony after the accepted date of the disappearance. That is how unreliable people are.
Oh, interesting.
So it very well could be this Sam guy just completely made up the entire thing. Maybe just to boast to his buddies. Yeah, she came to my house and we had sex for 6 days because it makes him, look like some stud or something.
Right. And, he came forward. But one of the things that I thought about him coming forward, like, why did you come forward? You could have come forward just because you were making it up. You could have come forward because you told some tall tale to somebody and were afraid that they were going to report you. But in his 6-day story, and this was really fascinating. This is why I love putting boots on the ground. In his 6-day story, he said he drove her, that she wanted to, or he wanted her to go home, or she, in different versions, or she wanted to go home. And so he was going to drive her to her parents' house. And this is like, 20-minute drive from St. Mary's Lake to downtown Browning. And there are 2 ways to get there. There's a shorter, flatter way that you have to pass. It's easy. Then there's a mountain that you can go up, and you can go all the way down that mountain, and it comes in the plains. Not that much longer, but not the convenient way to go. Okay? So he's headed the not the convenient way to go. Hey, maybe he wanted to see the mountains. Maybe, whatever it might be. But he says, and no one has her cell phone. He says that while headed up the mountain, she told him that she wanted to get dropped off at one of these side road drop-offs, which lead out to like ranch trails and other trails and stuff like that, near the top of the mountain. And, going there for myself and driving from his house to where her parents' house is at the time, in both directions, it just made no logical sense, because coming right out of the area where he lives, it's like, less than 5 minutes to take the left for the easy road, for the flat road. Why would you go all the way up the mountain, right? Like, all of these things for me. But in Sam's story, he said that Paul was supposed to pick her up there at the top of the mountain. And, that to me, that just makes it all more suspicious. One, that
it didn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. It did not happen. That did not happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why in my mind...
That doesn't mean he didn't kill her. That doesn't mean something untoward didn't happen or something. But that did not happen.
Right.
Now, of course, anytime, she's out, she's pregnant, she's in this relationship, the father of the child, the two of them aren't getting along well.
Well, at this point, it's really unclear because there's two people who could be the father. So if it's one of them, then they are getting along well. And if it's not, but the one where they may not have been getting along well, totally alibied out.
It's just a big mess. Yeah. It's women doing this, playing with fire. It very well could be that she was murdered, but I'm going to just say that I don't believe anything that Sam guy said. It's very well may be just likes the attention.
Right.
I really have to know a little bit more about him outside of, this disappearance.
Yeah.
But the stats are fairly clear. When pregnant women go missing, it's usually due to whoever the father thinks he is.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. One of the real twists in this story is, and I bet there are other cases like that where people have thought they are the father, and that's created a motive.
Yeah. Yes. Now, what that means, did she run off to go home or something? How long would it, I didn't need to know how far was the walk from this party back, back to her home. There's a lot of things that go into this.
Right.
Yeah,
it would have been, it would have taken a long time for a nice and healthy person to make it. Certainly.
It very well could be if she was drunk, she tried to walk home and died in the elements.
Yeah. And you can never rule that one out.
Yeah.
In these kinds of cases. What do you make of the cousin's reaction?
You will have to remind me how the cousin reacted.
That was the one where her sister Kimberly called her and, just said, "Have you seen Ashley?" And she started yelling at her, saying that she should talk to her husband. The cousin said, "Talk to the cousin's husband, Paul." And then when she called Paul, Paul said that the wife, who is the cousin, is lying to you. You should try to talk to her. She's trying to set me up. And this is before Ashley's even been reported missing.
I just don't know if you can believe any of these people.
Yeah.
They just don't sound like reliable people. One of the problems we run into also with disappearances is that families are just too prone to believe people who are saying what they want to say, no matter how crazy these people are otherwise, no matter how much they may have mental health issues or addicts or anything else. If these people will say what a family wants to hear, or it's words that go align with what the family already thinks, it's amazing how much these people are believed, even though these people have no history of being right about anything. So with these people, I don't know why anyone would believe any of them.
Right.
They just don't sound believable. They sound unreliable. They sound crazy. They sound dramatic. And who knows what was going on in their lives at the time. So you just can't take any of it seriously.
Right. And I do think there was probably a lot going on in everyone's life. And I imagine, for certain categories of missing people, you probably have a greater risk of unreliable people. So in a case like that, in that example, I think the family took it pretty seriously at first. The reservation put some resources into it initially, but then it tapered off for a while, and it was just the family. And the family, were finding different items in different places that may have been clues. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, which has some ability to do law enforcement work, just like the FBI on a reservation, eventually got involved after months and months and months. They lost some of the potential evidence. Then they found it years later. You know how this goes, right?
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering if there were, whether there, like, if you had what I initially told you in that story about Sam telling the story about dropping her off, like, what would be the first thing you would think?
It's lying. There's no, unless there's going to be something scientific that can connect Sam to her. I'm just not taking him seriously, and I'm putting him on the back burner.
Right.
For now.
So asterisks by that dude. Don't
Yeah.
pay a lot of attention.
It very well may be that I come back to him, but I'm not going to believe that he's involved just because he says so.
Right.
Because it just doesn't sound. I mean, so she's there for 6 days, doesn't contact anybody. You know, what kind of guy is he? What kind of guy is going to keep this woman for 6 days there, and not say, you know what? I really think you should tell your family they're here. I mean, Jason, you're not going to do that.
No.
I'm not gonna do that. Some woman wants to come over and stay in my place. That's like crazy. No, the answer is no.
That's right.
The answer is no. And I'm a single guy. The answer is still no.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is why no, we're not believing this guy. It very well may be, we go off on these other tangents, that there are breadcrumbs that lead us back to him, but I'm not gonna, these people are more than happy to send you all over the countryside, running around with your have your head cut off, whatever that saying is. They're more than happy to do that. Don't do that, because you'll just get more of it. Once they know that you are listening to them, they will tell you every crazy story in the world.
Well, and think about this case. So in disappearances, is this ever a factor for you when somebody inserts themselves into it without being asked? Does that ever raise eyebrows, or is that usually a normal thing that happens in communities?
It's, it happens. I don't know what the percentages are.
Right.
Unfortunately, probably my assessment of that is clouded because I've been most greatly connected to Steve Pankey, who is the definition of inserting himself into an investigation to the point that he got convicted of murder, even though there's no facts to connect him to that murder.
That's the Jonelle Matthews, Greeley, Colorado.
Yeah, in
13.
which police would have never looked at him until he started talking about her disappearance back in early 1985. And then 35 years later, guess what? He's being charged with her murder.
But it does sort of say something, that story itself does sort of say something, that people may insert themselves in investigations for reasons other than trying to game the investigation, or just people are unwell, or
very well could be
neurodivergent,
hurting themselves because they had something to do with it. Certainly.
Yeah.
My experience tells me that most people who commit crimes, murders, never talk about it. That's how they get away with it. People don't like to get caught. And the more boasting you hear, like I hear in some disappearances about how I did this and I caused this disappearance. And, we've run it, across this just recently with an episode that's coming out tomorrow with the disappearance of Zachary Vidal, where people saying, one of these days I might just tell you what happened to Zachary. That just tells me the person had nothing to do with it.
Right. Because why would you possibly give that preamble?
That's right. No, people don't like going to jail.
Yeah. So I'll give you another one. So when Ashley disappeared in 2017, Leo Wagner was about 25 years old, and he was one of the searchers for her in the first few weeks. They were family friends. When Leo was 29 in April of 2021, his disappearance, and it occurred around the same time that like a 3-year-old disappeared from the reservation. He disappeared from Babb, Montana, St. Mary's Lake, which was very close to where Ashley, or at least where Sam said Ashley was, and Sam said Ashley was dropped off. But there haven't. The Blackfeet law enforcement investigated it, called in the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Missing and Murdered Unit. to look into the case. Around the lake, there's been some evidence found. And I know you interviewed and have an interview coming out with Billy Wagner, who's Leo's brother. Is that a case you can speak to?
Sure. Very sadly, I just think that Leo had a death wish. That's the way I look at it. I don't see that he had been suicidal and been talking about he wasn't taking care of himself. He didn't care that he was spitting up blood. He didn't care that, he went to the hospital and his stomach or his intestine was perforated. He didn't care. He was trying to kill himself. So to think that if we're to think of a foul play, so he's trying to kill himself, then somebody comes along and kills him, it seems unlikely.
Right. They just happen to beat him to it.
A very, very bad place in his life. As bad as any missing person I have ever featured on Unfound. That just
wow.
Taught in a self-destruction. Very, very sad. It's horrible. And I like Billy a lot. Billy is a character. I like him a lot. His brother did a fantastic.
I've heard he's very entertaining.
Yeah, he is. He does, for sure. But his brother just, Leo just self-destructed. And unfortunately, I think he succeeded. Now, what does that mean? Why hasn't he been found? I can't answer that. It very well maybe he went into the lake, and due to the way the lake is, his body's on the bottom, and because of the way the water is and how cold it is or whatever else, it may stay down there. And Billy does talk about that during the interview that I did with him. Or he didn't go into the lake. He went back into the woods and he just hasn't been found yet. And of course, by now the animals would have found him. So.
Yeah, the lake is, I think, almost just short of 10 miles in length. I think when I was looking, I think its surface area is a little under 4,000 square acres, and it goes down 300 feet. That is
it's certainly
big piece
something.
Of water.
Certainly something, but like I said, I'm deferring to Billy. He knows the lake. I do not.
Yeah.
And his insight is that Leo went into the lake and that he's down on the bottom of the lake. And one of these days, maybe he will pop up. And that does have a precedence because there was just something within the news within the last month of, some fishermen snagging a body and bringing it into shore of some guy who went missing years ago. Was it in the Pacific Ocean or somewhere? And he was obviously on the bottom all that time, somehow.
Right.
So I guess it can happen. We so often think, well, bodies eventually come back up to the surface. Well, there's a lot of different physics involved.
Yeah. And that's always been one of the things that I've thought about, like, they could both be at the bottom of that lake, both Ashley and Leo. Who knows? But
it could be, like I said, I would need to know a lot more. And this is the reason I do the interviews that I do, to start narrowing these things down. And for me, it's just a matter of listening to what somebody has to say and knowing disappearances and coming up with what I think is the most statistically probable outcome. I certainly could be wrong. But that, because you have no evidence of anything when it comes to the police, whether there was a murder or anything else, you have to start with, in my opinion, what is most statistically probable. But the problem is police can't tell you that because they don't know.
Right. Are you familiar? This was on my list. I had a guest, Victorio Shaw, and his cousin. He's a judge out in California, a tribal judge. His cousin, Emily Risling, disappeared from Humboldt County on a reservation in California. And I was curious whether you had any thoughts about that case. Emily was in her 30s, had definitely had some mental health issues, some depression, showed some psychotic signs at different points. But she was last seen in October 2021. And she was also a mom. She was crossing a bridge near this area called the End of the Road on the Yurok Reservation. And the End of the Road is really kind of an interesting place because, Humboldt County is like the Murder Mountain County. The one that's
covered
all
a couple
about.
disappearances up there.
Yeah. And so the northern part of it, with the Yurok Reservation is huge, but the really what I would say the populated, you can almost split it into two different parts. There's populated part up north that you can reach that is virtually not connected to this part at the south where the End of the Road is. And at the end of the road, there are a bunch of houses. After you pass these bridges, there are a bunch of houses. It's known for like a party spot, occasional drug spot. It's very isolated. But she was walking into that direction for reasons that no one has any idea why. She was really one of those people. She was very accomplished. She appeared in the Washington Post as like I think 13-year-old or something around that age, because she had traveled and had been invited to go with other tribal members to the opening of the National Museum of the American Indian. But she was this very accomplished tribal dancer. She went off to the University of Oregon, where she got a degree. But in the weeks before, there were some strange things that happened. And in the months before, she had been arrested a couple times for, different kinds of public disturbances. Very, nothing violent, but ended up with the police. Family had to get her, lots of signs of mental health stuff. She eventually got into like real trouble because she was at a tribal event and she set a fire and said that she thought the fire was doing some positive spiritual thing, but it ended up being essentially arson. So there was a lot going on.
Yeah. Well, first, I need to know. I mean, is this sighting of her true? Of course, we have a lot of sightings that end up not being true. So, are there other reasons to believe that this person who was actually walking there, if there even was somebody walking there, is there reason to believe that that was even Emily? Did she live nearby? Was her car found nearby? Did she get dropped off there by somebody that we trust, that is telling the truth? These are all things I'd need to know to be able to make an accurate assessment, because I can't just be inclined to believe an eyewitness who said, yeah, I saw Emily walking. That's the business I'm in.
Yeah. I know law enforcement has said, but I think we have an absence of an understanding of whether she was seen by any specific individuals.
Right. So it's too vague. It's just, I realize that a lot of people, maybe you'll just believe that, and say, oh, well, she walked off. Well, maybe she got picked up by somebody, or maybe she jumped off the bridge or this. Whereas I have to start with, because of this is the work that I do, I have to first make sure that the sighting is true. So I have to figure out, well, is it reasonable to believe that she would have been in that area? Is there anything factual to say that she's there? Because eyewitnesses just aren't good enough. So do we know that? How did she get there?
So for you, assume, okay, if somebody isn't saying like, she was hitchhiking and I picked her up, or I am friends with her and I knew it was her and I talked to her and said, do you need a ride? And she was like, no. And she kept on walking or whatever. Unless you have something really, really solid like that, you wouldn't even start with the bridge.
No, I'd first have to start, well, what are we sure it was her? Was her car found down the street?
Right.
Was there any video of her driving in that direction? Where did she live? Did she have any friends in the area? What is she doing there? If this was a sighting, of course, the tough part is probably the person who saw her was not somebody she knew, because I'm thinking if it was somebody she knew, the person would have stopped. The odds of somebody driving by somebody, that person going missing, and then that witness coming forward later and saying, oh yeah, that was the woman that I saw. It's just, it happens, but it's just not very probable.
Right.
Because we're all in our own little worlds. I mean, I live here on Gulf Boulevard. I'm cruising up and down here almost every day. I was down here today. I couldn't remember anybody that I saw going up to Sankey Park and back. So how is it that somebody could remember a person they don't even know and say, yeah, that's definitely the person?
Well, it's interesting. The last person I really remember seeing walking around the road, it was in 2021. And I remember it because she jumped in front of a bunch of cars and started rolling on the ground in front of them.
Right.
So that's probably the last one I could remember.
Yeah. And the reason you remember is because it's so unusual. It sticks out.
Yeah. And I had to use my car to block traffic.
It doesn't sound like anything Emily was doing anything unusual. She was walking on the sidewalk just like everybody else does.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Are you familiar with the Jermaine Jourdain and Nevaeh Kingbird cases in Minnesota?
I looked at them, sure, for tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, but I know that Jeremy ran off and she also ran off. Yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah. And very within proximity to each other on the Leech Lake Reservation, the southern tip of it, another right on the edge of yet another body of water. But in both of those cases, which happened, it was a chunk of time between the two cases. I think Jeremy Jourdain disappeared. He was 17. I think it was in 2016. He was picked up from his grandfather's house and taken to a party in about 20 minutes away from their house. And supposedly he was seen around midnight running from the residence. And then, most people think that it's really unlikely that he was able to run the 15 or 16 miles that it would have taken to make it home. The police did air, land, water. Another thing, his social media account's completely silent. So you've got his case, but a few years before, you've got the Kingbird case, and I had the chance when I was out in Minnesota to meet some of her relatives, and she had been struggling with mental health issues. She had also had those were compounded because she was already struggling with them. She had suicides of two close friends. One was, I think, she disappeared in August, and one of the friends committed suicide in August. One had committed suicide in the previous April. And so on the day she disappeared, her mom called to check on her. Her daughter said, "I love you. Mom, I miss you." But her mom noticed that she was slurring her words and thought something was wrong. So her mom rushed home where she thought she was, and found a bunch of other teens in the house. And, when they asked them, and when the police came and asked them what happened, they said that she had slipped out the back door. So same jurisdiction, same situation. What are your thoughts?
When kids run off, bad things could happen. This is like what we were talking about before when it comes to Native American. A lot of white kids are doing the same thing and going missing.
Yep.
There's nothing unusual about this. Mental health issues happen everywhere. And it sounds to me like this is a situation where she was doing something she shouldn't have been doing, and maybe kids weren't supposed to be there. And so she's going to get in trouble. So she runs off, and I don't know what the surrounding environment is like. I don't know what the address is. Is there a river nearby or whatever else?
Yes. A very, very, very large lake and tributaries, bridges that go over water. Lots of stuff.
And
that.
She's running through the woods in dark. Does she have her phone out so she can use the flashlight or something? She's running through the night. She already has mental health issues. It's not crazy to think that she tripped and hit her head and fell. And when they went to look for her, they couldn't find her. That's not unusual. Going looking for people and not finding them, pretty common.
Mm.
In the same way with Jeremy. Same, I think that's his name. Same thing. It's just at some point, the odds are not in these kids' favor. Most kids who run off and don't want to get caught come back in a couple days, they get in trouble. Then once in a while, you have these ones who don't come back. And I'm not inclined to believe that it's sex trafficking or anything else. I think they're just running off and they get in over their heads. It's out in the dark. They're out in the woods. It's unsteady terrain. There's fallen trees. There's rivers. There's other there's animals and everything else. I mean, how complex can it get?
Yeah, if I were to show you the like an overhead map, Leech Lake is this giant, enormous lake with, like multiple arms to it, like one of those lakes. It's enormous. Like when you're standing on the edge of it, it looks like you're standing on the edge of an ocean when you're looking north. Wow. And but if you're standing on the edge of it, you can, at different points, certainly to the south of it, if you turn around, you're also surrounded by much smaller lakes. So it's a really marshy environment. You know what it reminds me of being in, although I don't think it's analogous, but that feel where you're in the Everglades and you feel like everything's water and you're like on a I always say I feel like I'm a tadpole on one of those floating, what do you call those? On one of the, yeah, right. Yes, yeah. But everything's in reverse. So it's not the most
right. So I don't know how that is.
Yeah. It's not the most hospitable place to go running in the middle of the dark at night.
Yeah. It's just kids running off in the middle of the night. It's the old saying, nothing good ever happens after 1 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I realize you have to know something, Jason. I'm known when it comes to my theories as Mr. Boring.
Well,
you're not going to get any sensationalism out of this guy because I know enough about the history of the disappearances like this to be able to somewhat predict what probably happened. Are there absolute exceptions? But I always stick to the really thick part of the bell curve.
Well, I mean, I'm all for throwing cold water on, if the real idea is to figure out what happens in justice, our imaginations are wild. And, I was talking to Julie about this yesterday. I'm talking to people on true crime, and I was saying, it's amazing to me how hard it is for people to be methodical. Like ask the simple, narrow question, then the follow-up question, then the follow-up question. Wait, stop giving me more than I need. And I think while it might be interesting at times, it doesn't serve coming closer to answers. So I wanted to give you another one. I mentioned, I think in my notes, Jiminy Posey, and she lived with her boyfriend, 7-month-old daughter. This one is in near Grand Forks area of North Dakota. So this is early January of 2024. Supposedly, the story is that she told her boyfriend that she was going to meet a friend and would be back later, right? Her boyfriend said he was playing video games, didn't see who picked her up. Then days later, her sister receives a message from the boyfriend's grandmother saying that no one has seen Jiminy since whatever date it was that she went missing. So I think we're talking probably like 4 days, something like that, 3 or 4 days. And that the reason why the grandmother called was because they had been caring for her baby, her 7-month-old daughter, which on its face with those facts, I find very interesting. What's your gut when hearing that?
She did not leave. He did something to her. No doubt.
Because why didn't he pick up the phone and call her?
Well,
She didn't come
he
back?
used to go see it. They're in a relationship. She goes to see a friend and she doesn't tell him what the name of the friend is. Really? I mean, I'm not trying to be Mr. I think that
That's a good point.
I'm not very good at relationships. I don't think any of my exes would say I'm very controlling. But if she says, well, I'm going to meet a friend, I don't think it's unusual for me to just say, oh, who are you going to see?
Who are you going to go hang out with?
Hi.
Yeah.
Or tell him I said hi. It's just a friend never named. It's a giveaway.
And then the other thing in that story when I think of is just who made the first call. You live with her. There's a 7-month-old. Why is it your grandmother?
Right.
A, taking care of the kid and making the call.
It's all right there if anybody wants to see it. Now, that doesn't mean if an investigator showed up and quickly deduced that's what happened, that it would be easy to solve or anything. But at least you'll be on the right track. But if you're telling me the investigators actually believe this guy, then that's crazy.
Yeah, no, I haven't gotten that vibe. But, so in a case like that, would you say that's one of those that fits into the example where, high likelihood that something's gone wrong? You've got newborn child, not necessarily pregnant, a boyfriend. And I forgot to tell you that in this case, she had been moving back and forth from where he was to where her family was. So that does not suggest all was smooth in life during that period. But that's a case where you would instantly sort of be, potentially foul play.
It is as stereotypical of the man said disappearance as can be.
Tell me about the man
Guy says woman in his life went off to meet somebody and doesn't come back. No idea how she was getting there. No idea who she was going to see. And then when she doesn't come back, the guy doesn't do anything. Doesn't call any of her friends, doesn't call the police, does nothing. It's as stereotypical as it can get. You almost could believe he didn't care that she was gone, which then means, you know what? He didn't really care about her, which then means he had a very high odds of doing something horrible to her.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Once again, I could be wrong, but overwhelmingly, this is what goes on. It's now what exactly happened there, and if he did do something to her, and why it happened, hard to discern because I don't know these people.
But that would be a scenario where,
and I'll be back. He's just like, okay, and he just keeps playing his Xbox.
That's one where I think Julia would say, I would prioritize that guy.
Yeah, right. It's one of those things. They have a child together. She was good enough to have sex with her, but she's not good enough for you to be concerned about where she's going by herself.
Good point. Yeah. Right.
You just go do what you got to do, honey. I'm just going to sit here and play my video games.
Yeah. And you really saw something before I saw it. I really saw it at him not making the call. But even if he had made the call that she was missing, you would still be suspicious of the fact that he didn't know where she was.
It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
I mean, it means something, but all you need to know is she was going to see a quote unquote friend, and that friend was never named, and he was totally fine with that.
Right.
Yeah, come on, man.
Right. So from your perspective, I was just thinking, do you have broadly, or when it comes to Native communities or both, any sort of one of the constant refrains that I hear, and I don't think it's particularly hyperbolic, but that the responsibility on some of these long-term cases really falls on the families.
It does.
Yeah. And I was wondering if you had any recommendations. We've talked a lot about what law enforcement can do, but Any recommendations for the families and anything else for law enforcement?
I do. And I know this is a little self-serving, but you should listen to about 100 of Unfound's disappearances. I mean, I've covered like 300, almost 380 disappearances. I would never say somebody has to listen to all of them, but listen to about 100 of them. It's going to take a little while. But if there's nothing else, if there's no other way that you can become educated as to what goes on with disappearances, do that. You're going to come away having a pretty good idea of what is going on out there and where investigations go right and where investigations go wrong. And you're going to hear what families have done and failed and what families have done have succeeded. And it's going to give people out there an idea of what to do next, because usually families run out of ideas fairly quickly. And I'd like to think that when they come to me, I can give some insight as to, get them doing stuff, get them doing something constructive instead of them just sitting on the couch at home, and just mentally killing themselves because they're worried and everything else. You got to give these people constructive things to do. And so, and unfortunately I can't talk to all of them. So the way is just listen to some of the episodes and get yourself educated. And what goes on from there is going to have to be styled to what actually is your disappearance story. Is it the man said type of disappearance, like we just talked about? Is it one like Emily Risling where you have to really go find out, well, did that witness really see her or not? Things like that you'd have to start tailoring what you're going to do. But you can only do that if you become a little educated. And frankly, you have to become cynical, as I've become over the last 9 years, about anything, regardless. And what witnesses say and what husbands say, and you just have to doubt all of it.
It's interesting you say that, because in a lot of these cases, the first jump is to let's go pull together a search in fill in the blank area, right? But one of the things I noticed about you, and it's very similar to the way that like a really good investigator, a really good lawyer breaks things down, where you start with the base presumption. Like,
yeah.
And literally a lawyer will start with, okay, prove to me that this person was alive. Okay, here's the proof of life. Next, let me work on a timeline of what I have verified that I can hard prove. Because I think of a lot of things. Like I think about Ashley's case. For the longest time, people said, including the FBI and including in the National Missing Persons Database, that she disappeared on June 13th. But when I heard the story, I was like, Sam says he dropped her off on June 13th. Like, roll that clock back.
Yeah.
Roll it back to where she didn't respond to her sister.
Right. That
would be a good starting part. So
right.
Roll it back.
The disappearance date, right? I don't know how you can do anything well.
Right. And so I think there's something to be said for, even for the families, being really methodical about sort of asking what we know and what we don't know before jumping into some of these efforts, like search efforts, or at least questioning, right? The story that you're...
I give you two different examples, even though they kind of seem like they're the same, but they're not. Anytime you have instead of a car missing, but a car abandoned, like we might think about the disappearance of Jason Landry in Texas.
Yep.
Fairly well-known disappearance where he was driving home from college, seemingly was supposed to make a turn and didn't, got onto a gravel road, lost control, hit a fence. Eventually somebody came along, saw the car. Jason is still missing a few years later. Many, many, many searches have been done. The big deal there is at least we are very, very sure that Jason was driving the car. Okay, there is no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. Now, all these searches have been done. We're ready to go. Well, we can talk about that. But in contrast to maybe a disappearance like here in Florida of Gregory Brooks, who went missing over in the Orlando area, and then his car was found in the median in the Tampa area.
Huh.
Abandoned car, not wrecked, but abandoned. And there's no proof that Gregory ever put it there. So even though we have 2 young men who are missing and their cars are abandoned far from where they lived, they are 2 distinctly different cases. And you have to be able to discern which is which and be able to know that you have to look at Jason Landry's from this point of view. And you have to look at Gregory Brooks's disappearance that is now like 30 years old from a different point of view.
Yeah. And that if I look at one of those, taking Jason Landry's, could easily be he was injured or misadventure or
but had injury and walked off and
died, tripped.
Yeah.
Right. But I look at this other one where I say, okay, the car's probably like, depending on traffic, more than an hour away on a medium. And we know he went missing from...
It was technically Castleberry, which is on the other side of Orlando, but nobody knows where Castleberry is.
So it really is a hike.
Orlando.
Right.
Yeah.
That gives you... It makes you question or wonder about a whole set of different things.
Yep. Right. And so when it comes to families have to be discerning like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to learn about disappearances, does their disappearance seem more like Jason's? Or does it seem more like Greg's?
Right.
Or does it seem like more like somebody else's disappearance that also is an abandoned car that is totally different from both of those? You have to know these things, and police should know these things too. They're just not all the same.
How many cases do you think you did before you started to feel like you had some proficiency?
Oh my goodness. I will tell you that once in a while I re-air some of those older episodes from like the first year or two.
Mm-hmm.
From an interview point of view, I kind of cringe. Okay, I hear things, man, I would do this totally different now. But I would say that probably right around the time Steve Pankey came into my life in the fall of 2019.
Okay.
Is when I think that I would have been like 3 years into the podcast, that I really, really started to hone my ideas. And because when I start talking about the ones that I made predictions that I missed, that I didn't get them right, they're mainly ones that happened, that got resolved, that I covered before then. Whereas since 2019, man, I've been pretty good. I've been pretty good in predicting resolutions, not just to Unfound cases, but ones that I see in the news and things that eventually usually get resolved in a fairly, fast manner. So I would say it took me like 3 years. So that's like 120 episodes or something like that.
Right. How many total cases are we at now?
375.
Wow.
Or something like that. Let me, I have that on my right here. Where is it? What is it? It is Zachary Vidal tomorrow will be 374. Leo Wagner next week will be 375. But you should remember within those, there's actually some ones where I covered a couple disappearances at the same time.
Right. You did Malaysia.
People, I'm closer to like 430.
Okay. So a significant number of people, significant number of cases. I cannot recommend your podcast and more, or your YouTube channel. I love the geo-profiling. Perhaps my favorite thing actually is your Patreon. The write-ups are there. You get a chance to sort of like soak it in. But I think it's a great resource for anybody who's interested in the topic. I think it's a great resource, like we're talking about, for families, and especially for law enforcement. I just don't understand why you wouldn't tap into this great resource that exists. And I'm not saying that just because you're here with me, Ed.
Thank you.
You see by my actions that I believe in it.
Sure. And I appreciate that. And you should know that something new is coming down the line.
Okay.
And first of all, I'm having someone redo the unfoundpodcast.com website. So a new design is going to be happening, but I'm starting a new website where I am going to be shopping my consultancy.
Oh, neat.
Where people can come to me, and it's going to be kind of, I'm going to, how do I put it? I'm going to put, my actions where my words are.
Right.
And it's going to be a situation where I'm going to put it out there. People can come to me with all of the paperwork that they have, and I will give them my best insight. And the way we will work out payment is something along the lines, if I'm wrong, they get their money back. And if I'm right, I get to keep the payment.
That's pretty good deal.
It is a good deal.
It's a good deal. The incentives are aligned.
We'll have to work on the contract. I'll have to get a lawyer to write it up and everything. But I don't want it to just be something like what a lot of private investigators do, where they will pay me and I'll see if I can do something for you.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas I want to be more like a plumber, where we hire you to come fix a problem. And if I can't fix the problem, then you don't have to pay. Or at least for the most part, pay me for my time or something like that. Some of your money back.
Right.
This is the big problem I have with private investigators. They want their money no matter if they get a solution or not.
Right.
And
create such trust issues.
I'm starting to do that.
Very cool.
Cut into my podcasting time, but it's so interesting to me, Jason. There are so many people out there, like airline pilots and lawyers who are, they're looking to get into YouTube channels and everything else. And I'm trying to go the opposite direction.
Like, I want to get out of this and operationalize it.
Reality, and then trying to get out of reality. I'm just going.
It's time. Imagine that, Ed going against the grain.
That's what I do.
Well, thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for the conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody out there found it informative. If you want to contact me, just email me, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. I respond to everybody.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for joining Ed and I for the second of 2 episodes on the missing and murdered Indigenous persons crisis and disappearances. If you'd like to join us for more discussions with me and other listeners, we can be found on most social media platforms, including a listener-run Facebook group called the Silver Linings Fireside Chat. For deeper conversations and live conversations with our guests, you can join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Silver Linings Handbook. I'm Jason Blair, and this is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. We'll see you guys all again in a few days.